All right, so I guess we're on the fourth installment of the Every Fighting Game Type Explained video commentary series. And
Already?
this, yeah, already. This is getting into a very different kind of fighting game, if you want to
Yes.
call it that. We are the hybrid section, right? So now there's the archetypal fighting game combined or mixed with a different kind of game to create a new type of fighting game.
hmm
And the biggest one that comes to mind, obviously, is Super Smash Brothers, the
Mm.
platform fighter. So there's a lot to talk about
Oh, yeah.
with Smash because there's been, I think 2013 was a big year for Smash's competitive scene getting out into more of the FGC in general, right? I
Right.
think that's when Smash was at Evo,
Yes.
and apparently that year. Was it 2013? I think I was there that year, and there were people like Mango and Hungry Box,
The big names.
alongside Daigo and like Tokido and all those people. So it was this weird clash of people from different sub communities, but they're all in the same place playing games.
Yep.
But there's definitely a difference between the communities because there's a different history. And I think one of the biggest things is it's not just that it's a Nintendo game with
Mm.
Kirby and Pikachu. It's also that Smash didn't come out in the arcades. It doesn't have an
Yeah.
arcade background.
No coin op
Yeah, no
machines.
coin op machines. So that's one of the big differences. And of course, like Street Fighter and Tekken, those games are older and they've been around for longer. So there's kind of a different vibe with Smash. And one of the guys that really kind of uh, showed me how competitive and how deep Smash was this guy named Josh Glandorf. I met him at Arcade Stream. Actually,
Okay.
it was a long time ago. This was before Korea Gaming started,
Right.
and
Still
this
in
was
Korea, right?
yeah, I was in
Yeah,
Korea,
yeah.
and I
Okay.
was playing Street Fighter 4 during that time.
hmm
And they had these CRTs at Arcade Stream. They had these
Man.
like Vuelix cabs that were playing Street Fighter 4, but then like another part of the room had these CRTs playing. I believe it was Melee at the
Okay.
time, and these guys were so into the game. They came out more often and regularly than any of the Street Fighter guys did.
Mm.
And this guy Josh Glandorf and Eric, of course, Lemma. He was rocking Falco. He's a Falco main, and
Okay.
they would just take these CRTs and put them in cars and drive around to
Wow.
the closest place that had the next Melee tournament,
Okay.
right? So these people were very dedicated, and I think one of the first times I thought Smash was sick
Mm.
was when I saw I think it was PPMD's Marth.
Right.
So watching like high level Marth play, I don't know why, but it's just there's something so clear about the whiff punishing and
Yep.
gauging the ranges of attacks and
hmm
the tipper attacks and everything. There's the tipper mechanic is basically if you hit someone at the tip of the sword,
Mm.
it does like a damage boost.
Yeah.
And just seeing people master that and on top of the movement and everything, I always thought that was so sick. And of course, like spiking people into the pit and just any
Yeah.
kind of stuff that felt really, really fighting gamey, right?
Sure.
And so I guess this kind of brings us to the topic of is Smash a fighting game? We talked about all these differences
Yeah.
between the communities. I guess I don't know, Kevin. Like, what is your kind of run in with Smash? And I guess what's your
Oh.
background with Smash? I know we're both not like Smash
Yeah.
people
I'll
per
admit,
se.
I know of Smash and I played when I was a kid. But sadly, I didn't really get into the competitive scene as a player much. More of a TO in my locals back then in Australia. Yeah, and like even then, until now, I still hear uh people saying in like offline venues as well as like big major tournaments, even online social media, like there's this group of people who want to heavily defend the fact that Smash is a fighting game. Them knowing that there are other forces out there claiming that it's not. And yeah, I didn't really take that seriously, but then it seems to be like a ongoing thing. Although not many people, I would say, they are supporting this idea. But to me personally, and for this video that we've made, the fact that it is under the fighting game tree, for me, yes, it is a fighting game. If I were to categorize it, like if it were to be recorded in the history books, right? I would probably say it is definitely a fighting game, purely because of the gameplay aspect. Like I don't mind the visuals or the mechanics. Sure, it can be unique on its own, but just for the pure 1v1 mechanic, that alone, I think it's once again fighting gaminess. To me, enough to say that it's a fighting game.
Yeah, so I guess one of the issues with Smash being seen as a fighting game or whatever is obviously because it's a different kind of game. It's in the hybrid category.
Heavily looks different too. That did kind of put a bit of weight into that discussion too.
And I think a lot of people do have issue because sometimes communities don't want to be conflated with one another. They don't want to be considered part of that community.
Right.
And if you have something like one big banner for these kind of games, fighting games, then it's kind of it's kind of confusing, and it kind of doesn't explain the identity quite precisely in a way that some people who find it very dear to them and important to them would be satisfied with.
Yes.
Well, so there is that aspect of it, which is like if somebody came up and was talking about, oh yeah, I'm really good at fighting, and I have a really strong fighting game background. I'm it's actually one of my favorite genres, and I love fighting games, and I do pretty good at tournaments. I'd say I'm a pretty good fighting game player. And they've never played Street Fighter. They've never played Tekken. They've never played anything from the archetypal tree, and they've only played stuff from the hybrid.
Sure.
Then that might seem like
Then
I'm good at fighting games sounds a bit like, but then if somebody's never played Smash or Arena in tournament and say I'm good at fighting games, no one would have a problem with that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So this is where there's kind of like an identity issue. And I think it's, you see this in rock music and metal music as well. And this is why I use the analogy in the Every Fighting Game Type Explained video, because I use Beastie Boys as an example, because they actually were the ones that really popularized the idea of having rap in rock music.
Sure.
But there was another analogy that would have been way more controversial that I almost put in, but I realized, one, it wasn't as accurate, and two, it would be way more vitriolic. The idea of nu metal, right?
I see.
So if you talk to some really like pure metal guys about nu metal, there's a very it can get pretty polarizing, right? So a lot of metalheads will just look at nu metal and be like, "Oh no, that's not metal music. That's just some pop. That's something else."
So many other subgenres of our culture have a similar thing going on in their own kind of communities.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And I think this is why it was a good example. I didn't say that it was metal and nu metal. I just said it was like like rock and Beastie Boys, which is whatever you want to call that kind of music, right? Rap rock or whatever. But so yeah, like I don't think if I were to say Smash is the Limp Bizkit of fighting games, I think that would have been there would have been more confusion there, right? So it was, I think Beastie Boys was kind of a good way to Beastie Boys are respected and they're and
they made a mark.
They made a mark, and they definitely created a hybrid genre. And I even used the example of I put a clip of Linkin Park in there.
Oh, I see.
And Linkin Park has an album called Hybrid Theory. It's one of their best
albums.
One of our
chapters too.
Yeah, and that was the name of the chapter, which was kind of there's some people in the comments of the video that got that, which
I know there's a lot of music heads in the subscriber list as
for
well.
sure. I know it's not like everybody's into rock music, obviously not, but it's kind of like
Linkin Park come to Korea?
Yeah, I saw them.
Oh, I missed out.
Yeah.
How was it?
It was okay, I'm gonna be completely honest. They performed great. They played well. But I think the sound quality in the stadium that they played in, it was in Incheon. It was like at a casino resort place. The sound quality was not as as clear, I guess. I don't know if it
Okay.
was like something about the acoustics, but that's
Right.
just me being like I go to a lot of shows, and
Right.
that's very
You can't
important to
help but
me.
compare, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but the atmosphere was there, and they all played really well. So
Nice.
but it was so nostalgic, just going back to like
It is.
seeing these songs again.
Hmm.
So I used rock a lot as an analogy because those are also things where people have very strong opinions
Mm,
about that
mm,
are
mm.
very in something, if you think about it, is not all that different,
Right.
right?
Of course. Because for me, like if I focus back on those who are maybe not into music that much at all, like whenever I go to my locals as well as majors in and outside of Australia, Smash is always there. Just like how fighting games were always there too when the Smash guys come to the tournaments, right? They have a
Yeah.
section for Smash Brothers with all the CRTs, and then the fighting game section is always there. One, I guess, technical or realistic reasons why people kind of draw that invisible line could be a lot of things like the things we talked about just before. But one thing that I did notice back then, I had a bit of a light bulb moment that if I held an arcade stick to the venue, I can use this arcade stick to play all the games, all the fighting games, but Smash. So that
That's
would be
right. That's
one
right.
boundary for the entry point being having a hurdle where if there's
Yeah.
a fighting game on the Xbox 360, the used to be tournament standard console, I could just use my stick that I play Street Fighter 4 with on this
Yeah.
game. No issue, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, and it was a realistic reason because it was on the Nintendo consoles. It was on the GameCube, right? The melees.
Yeah. That's a huge barrier. I even
Yeah.
forgot about
That's
that.
the
Yeah.
realistic barrier that I could think of.
It's even a barrier for somebody who has like a PlayStation controller,
Well, yeah.
because you can't just go plugging in PlayStation controllers to Nintendo Wii's
Hmm.
and playing, right? You have to have some kind of a Nintendo
Adapter or something.
adapter or
Yeah.
Nintendo compatible controller to even play the game. And then of course there's the GameCube controller,
Yeah.
yeah, we got a couple of GameCube controllers in here. I needed one to make a recording on the video, but it's a very different way of playing the
Yeah.
game. And
Even if
yeah,
the controls did translate well into sticks, there has been a lot of experiments done where how does it, become a gameplay style with your arcade stick even, because like you mentioned how PPMD was doing his practice stuff.
yeah,
Smash Brothers, in my opinion, it is played on the analog stick
Yeah.
for movement rather than your traditional 4 or 8-way directions that is
Yes.
digital, right?
yes,
So things like sliding your analog stick slightly and all the way is very different.
yeah. We were coming from 8-way games
Yeah,
to
to
suddenly to
360.
360 degrees,
Yeah.
right? And there's so many different points at which, like, going forward. Now that there's a lot more directions, but there's also the amplitude of the direction, like how much you push the analog stick. Determines how fast the person will move,
Yeah,
right?
and
So
there was that moment we even used on the video where the Smash commentator mentions the tool for measuring angles.
the protractor,
Protractor angled projectile
yeah.
shooting, right?
Yeah. It's
So it matters.
yeah. There's definitely and of course there's the idea of DI, which is a huge
Yes.
thing in Smash games, which you don't really see in
Many other
archetypal fighting games, right? So there are just so many different things, but then at the same time, it's like, well, it's kind of hard to say it's completely different. I think one of the issues also is, for me, just looking at Smash and trying to come up with another genre for it. It's like you can't call that, a fighting game platformer. It makes more sense to call it a platform fighting game, right?
Yeah.
So that, I guess, what's more precise in a way that avoids all confusion might be saying something like it's a platform fighting game,
Yes.
right? Whereas even in like archetypal games, you have people who try to clarify things like, oh, I'm good at 2D fighting games, or I'm good at 3D. And those are kind of seen as very different as well, but they're still part of the same family in that sense. Whereas like the hybrid games are more of a cousin. And so I guess there's the things that we mentioned in the video, like auto-facing. One of the things that we realized that binded a lot of fighting games together is the idea of auto-facing, because that is a crucial element where where you didn't really have that in platformer games. If you're playing like a Super Mario Brothers game,
it's like free movement.
yeah, it's like free movement. You can move wherever, and then there might be lock-on mechanics and stuff like
Some
that.
cases might be like that. Yeah.
But like Zelda has lock-on mechanics and things like that.
Or like homing stuff.
Yeah. But generally in fighting games, because the whole thing's about TDR, the timing, distance, and reactions.
Even more precise TDR than I think in the Smash games.
Yes, by having an auto-facing or auto-aiming element in these kind of games, there's more emphasis on the distance and I think there's reactions and everything, but it's the kind of fighting game kind of reactions where you're gauging distance and reacting to that. And so it's a big part of what makes these fighting game. And I think, Seijai mentioned it. You mentioned it. There's also Ryu and Ken.
That's right.
In Smash.
You can Terry and Kazuya also.
They also auto-face in those games. Yeah. And I've even heard Smash players complaining about how that's kind of like, overpowered.
It's a privilege if you think about it.
It's a predator effect. Yeah. It's like what character can do that? But I imagine like being able to face away has some advantages too. Yeah. So I don't think it's like an all or nothing kind of thing. But still, like I can see where it could be an advantage in a lot of cases. But then what's interesting is when you play 4-player mode, I think they're not auto-facing anymore because now you have 2 opponents.
Yeah.
Right. And so that 1v1 element is very integral to the core of the archetypal fighting game.
One of the realistic reasons also I see that, you know how Smash has side something as a move, right? Like side B for example. But those archetypal characters have left this and right that. So it's
or back this and forward that.
Yeah. So if the auto-facing wasn't a thing, Ryu could like accidentally tatsu off the screen and just die.
Oh yeah.
So those things will happen, and it has happened to some.
Sure.
That's why I think auto-facing was required to actually kind of stuff in all the traditional move sets of those characters because it's so vast in the move list. So yeah.
Yeah. One thing that a lot of people mentioned in the comments, and I kind of expected this because we actually played this game in the old office or the previous office.
Trying to research some stuff.
Yeah, there's a game called Outfoxies.
Yes.
Right, and that predates Smash by a pretty good number of years. I think it was like 1995, 94.
Outfoxies end of 94.
In 94. Yeah. So that's a very, very old game, but it does have that kind of platform fighting feel. It is like a fighting game.
You could probably say maybe you are a fighting game player or good at fighting games because this was in the arcades.
Oh,
Outfoxies is an arcade game.
Yeah, you did. Okay.
So if you only play Outfoxies and you go to someone else that I played this back in the day, I love fighting games, and this is actually a coin-op game, like a versus game.
Yeah.
So you could play.
So it's definitely a very different kind of game, even to Smash, right? And so the way I saw Outfoxies, and I guess I could have made a small mention of it, but when you're making a video that's already going over an hour, it's like hard to put every little thing. But
imagine, this is a little tangent. If we did add everything that we researched, how long you reckon the video would have been?
I mean, probably like, I think it would have been like maybe 30 more minutes or something like that.
Okay.
At most like 2 hours or something.
Sure.
If we put like every little kind of like the first overhead and like where did this overhead come from?
2 hours is.
And then we would have talked about the Data East Capcom lawsuit.
Yeah.
And I mean, you can talk forever about this kind of stuff. This is what podcasts are for, right?
Yeah,
this is why we're talking about this stuff.
This is why we're here.
Yeah. So Outfoxies is something that I kind of more saw as a prototype for the Smash platform fighter, right?
Visually, like even before playing it, visually you could tell, it's a platformer game at first, even before thinking about the fighting game aspect. They're moving in between platforms up and down, and it's 2D.
Yeah.
Has items.
Yes. Oh, yeah. You can throw items and stuff at each other, right? You can pick up
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So
projectiles.
it's kind of it was an interesting game. But then I remember when I was a kid, I also played this game called Metal Warriors on Super Nintendo.
Okay.
And this game was kind of, this was an interesting game because it was kind of like almost, you were basically in these mechs that could shoot. It was like kind of a shooting game like Contra, but you're in like mechs. But they had a 1v1 mode where you could you kill each other,
Mm.
and it was split screen because the stage was like so big. It was a split screen mode, so it's kind of you couldn't really hide because obviously in split screen games
in
you
the
can see
same screen.
yeah, it's on the same screen. Yeah, so it was kind of like that is kind of a mix between like arena fighting, multi-screen arena slash platform shooting fighting game. I don't know. Metal Warriors is an interesting one. I remember I had a lot of fun with that game, and I didn't realize that it was because there's a lot of fighting gaminess in there that I enjoyed.
If you're in a versus mode or versus environment with someone, that's definitely entitled to be a fighting game in my opinion. So
yeah. So I guess
and then this game Outfoxy's one special remark is that there's no concept of blocking.
Oh, no blocking,
Yeah,
no
you
shielding,
cannot
no blocking. You
just get hit.
just kill each other. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
There's no defending.
It's like 2D Power Stone.
Ooh. Okay. Wow.
And funnily enough, it was played as a I don't think it's a main tournament, but as a side tournament in the old SBO, Togeki series. And I grabbed the clip, which is kind of hilarious because it still used the same mind games that we would use in a traditional fighting game.
What year was this?
This was 2012.
Wow, that was way later. Way after this game came out.
Well, 12 years ago. So yeah.
Okay. What?
So
what does high level version of Outfoxy's look like even?
So I told you there's no block button.
Yeah.
So it's all about running away.
Okay. Okay, zoning. Okay.
And by the way, the rule set is, I don't know if it's changeable or not, because once again, this is an arcade game.
Yeah.
The timer, the timer that, takes from whatever to zero is 200 seconds.
200 seconds, okay.
Yes. So
but those timers, you can never tell how long 1 second is, right? Everybody has a different...
Yeah, if it wasn't the proper, like the 60 frames kind of concept, then it was always difficult.
Oh, I remember this boat stage. I think this is a stage that we played on when we first messed around in this game.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, this is very platformer-like. You can, go up on the different layers. And what the heck? Oh, this is so low resolution. Oh, okay.
Yeah, so if I were to commentate, which I'm not the best at because I only played a little bit of this as well. So I want you to focus on the health, right? It's still full.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
but they both have full health. They have health bars, like in an archetypal game.
So you can still knock them off the edges like Smash, but you can KO them because they have health concepts, right?
Yeah.
And see how they're all picking up items and stuff? There's rocket launchers, there's guns, there's melee weapons as well as the normal melee attacks.
You can ring out people, and there's health bars.
Yeah.
So I guess it's kind of more like Virtual Fighter in that sense, as a loose
This
comparison.
is also platypus in that sense.
Yeah.
So I want you to see, I'll tell you when it is. Just focus on the health bar most of the time.
Okay.
And then see how the stage is tilting?
Yeah.
There are times when the line of sight opens up at a certain angle. That's why they want to shoot at a specific time.
So they're waiting for that perfect moment.
Yeah.
So I guess
on
there's
that
not a
rocking
lot of
action.
health that these characters have. They can die pretty quickly, I imagine.
Well,
Or
it's
they're
not that
playing
they
super
can,
safe.
Yeah, they're just because once again, no blocking. They just want to be safe as possible.
Okay.
90 seconds have passed.
Okay, so half the match in time. Okay, somebody fired, I think.
Yeah, they're still firing at each other, finding that opportunity.
Okay. Yeah, it's... Oh, okay, I can see him looking for that angle in
they're
this stage.
only shooting when it rocks at a certain angle.
Yeah.
They're doing little hop, jump shots.
Well, it seems like guns are very powerful in this game.
Yeah. It's not hit scan, but it does travel, but it's very fast.
Very fast projectile. Yeah.
And there are like guns with different power levels, explosives, barrels, and obstructable items and stuff.
Oh, that
right,
line of sight. Yeah.
So look at Eve on the left.
Yeah.
She got nicked by a pistol.
Yeah.
That's the amount of health that she has.
Yeah.
And remember, other than ringing out, you can timer scan people.
Oh, you can timer scan people
so
too.
now this John Smith character just has to survive. Yeah. He's leading right now.
John Smith is a character? That's great.
The concept of this game's lore, is that they're all assassins.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I remember there's like those twin girls that kind of look like the girls from the Shining movie.
They're also the assassins.
Oh man.
Didn't you use that as a top clip as well? The twins from
I was
Shining?
going to. I think it didn't make it into the final cut.
Look at the timer now, 25 seconds
Yeah.
left. So
Okay.
John Smith is just turtling. He's
Yeah,
zoning right now.
Yeah.
This is
Wazler,
zoning.
Wazler right here.
Yeah, Wazler moment.
Yeah.
And Eve is trying to catch John Smith right now. But look what happens in order for John Smith to do a timer scam. Right, 9 seconds left. So he falls in the water. You don't instantly die. As long as you're in the screen, you're still alive.
Yeah, okay.
So once you're in the ground, he can dodge all these projectiles like in the water.
Okay.
And the timer scam happened.
Wow. So that's like the equivalent of like if you're like Eliza in Tekken, your timer scamming by sleeping or something.
Yeah,
where you're
sleeping.
vulnerable, you put yourself in a more vulnerable position, but you're just running out the time
Yeah.
in a safer way.
All the attacks will whiff, right?
Yeah.
So that's how. And remember, SBO is first to one.
Oh,
Yeah, this is
that's
how
right.
you
Yeah,
won
yeah.
by timer scamming in a 1994 game.
Yo, competitive fighting games. This is
So that's why, yeah, Outfoxes is also a fighting game in my opinion.
that was pretty sick.
Yeah. So I mean,
Yeah,
it existed. It definitely existed.
but yeah,
I guess
it definitely is a very different kind of game, though, right? It's compared to like Smash. So this is where I feel like that is like the Karate Champ to Smash in
Sure.
a way.
Yeah.
It
it was an inspiration.
yeah, I mean, and I guess there's not a lot of interviews or people talking about how that game inspired Smash, or even if it did. But that game was also not as popular, right? So that's another thing.
Unfortunately,
Karate
yes.
Champ was popular. ER Kung Fu was popular.
But to be fair, this game is like very, very old.
Yeah.
And also, it definitely does take the credit for being the prototype / inspiration for many other platform fighting games out there. But I mean, if you were to put in a direct comparison, it didn't have a block button. It had items compared to where Smash has a shield and doesn't use items in tournament settings. So
No, Smash was way more. It's just, I think it's more complete of a platform fighting game. It's just has so many
how
more
the community
elements.
has shaped it.
Yeah,
Right? That's the beauty
They've
of
shaped it
Yeah.
too, and I think defensive mechanics are a big part of fighting games. This is something I didn't talk about explicitly, but I showed it implicitly by showing the high-low blocking mechanisms and the way that you shield in Smash and the rules that are in those games. And defensive mechanics are a big part of fighting games. That doesn't mean that you have to have it, but if you look at all the games that I talked about, I would say the vast majority have some kind of defensive or blocking mechanic. The thing is, moving is a form of defense as well, but it's a form of offense, right? But blocking is completely a defensive activity.
I guess
because
you cannot win with blocking.
no,
right?
you can't.
Yeah.
You can't kill anyone by blocking. That's not. But I guess you could say the same about moving. But moving will put you in a position to where you can attack people.
It leads towards it, right?
Yeah, and the thing about moving also is there's movement that's just for the sake of movement, but then there's attacks that move you as well. So if you think about a dive kick, a dive kick necessarily is an attack and a movement option at the same time in a big way. Or even like Akuma's medium kick in Street Fighter 4, the Japanese call that the barrier because he's like doing this kick, but it pushes him forward every time he does it. So it's like in a way, it's kind of it's a form of movement, while also being, but mainly being known as an attack. So where the line between offense and defense lies is usually pretty difficult to tell. But the idea of like blocking is very much a defensive mechanic. So I think that's one of the things about Smash that made it very different from the other games. I mentioned the shielding thing, and that's one of the biggest sources of accessibility in Smash. I feel it's underrated because a lot of people will talk about like no motion inputs for special moves or whatever, and that is a big element of accessibility, but I think the blocking system, the shielding system is way more intuitive. And of course I made like a joke about how like, there's no highs and lows, so you don't have to like worry about, you don't have to think about explaining why this attack is a high attack.
High, right.
When it was Honda doing, close standing light kick, which just kind of like basically taps someone's ankle with his foot. It's like, how is that a high attack, right?
In relation, there has been games where standing lows were real too.
Yeah.
So a lot of characters did have a standing low, like Sea Viper standing close light kick, as well as Morrigan, her stand light kick close version.
Even Honda, we just talked about Honda, a forward hard kick.
Yeah, that's a
low.
standing low,
Yeah.
technically. Yeah,
It's a
yeah.
standing low.
So
yeah.
standing lows do exist, but because of those standing low lookalikes exist, that's where the confusion
There's
happens.
so much confusion, yeah. And you don't have that with Smash and the shielding system, right? And I made that diagram, the high-low and the blocking, high-low blocking, and then high, mid-low attacks. And you can see how much it simplifies whenever you put the shielding and attack.
Yeah.
It's just shield and attack. And then there's a little more sophistication in terms of like how to defend when your shield gets smaller.
Right.
And apparently, I talked to Leffen about this. He said it does matter in some situations.
Sure.
It's not a common thing.
It's a knowledge check, I guess.
It's a knowledge check thing where if your shield gets really small to where now you're vulnerable, you can move that shield. And so you can move that little bubble to like different parts of your body to
your
block
head
stuff.
Or something to block something coming from the air.
The air from above you, right? So there is kind of like once the shield gets small, there's another element of skill that's involved to try to defend yourself. So that's kind of an interesting mechanic. It's definitely not like an overpowering mechanic in the game, but there is kind of an intricacy. But I wouldn't say that mastering that is as much of a skill as learning how to block, high-low left-right mix-ups in Dragon Ball Fighters or Marvel is, right? So it's definitely that is one element that's very different from the archetypal fighting games. And maybe this is for another podcast, but I'd love to talk about like just the high-low blocking system and how crucial that is, and how misunderstood it is for a lot of people. What the of why that's important and how important that is.
I would love to kind of go through as like putting a importance hierarchy.
Sure.
Like where does blocking stand in comparison to other actions in fighting games? So, for example, just for fun and giggles, like if you lined up, down, left, right, light punch, like all the punches, all the kicks, and then you add block in there. Like, is block higher than the light punch, or is it more important than the sweep kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, we cannot check every single detail, but you got to kind of narrow it down to, in this situation, whether would you be blocking or would you be attacking or even doing something completely different that involves movement or defensive elements.
Yeah. What's interesting is when I was interviewing Leffen, I think, and this one made it into the video. Leffen was talking about like, how different is it, like the idea of like having like an Oki game where people are constantly putting pressure, and repeating their Oki setups versus somebody just edge guarding somebody for like 30 seconds, right? So you've seen the Smash games where like they're just edge guarding, like there's like a lot of pressure on the person that's trying to get back on the platform, but just getting edge guarded by a masterful player who's just like creating this wall, right?
Yeah.
And so it's in that sense, it's kind of like a lot of the defensive skill in Smash has been moved. If we were to say that the left, right, high, low mix-up stuff is missing from Smash, I think it's made up for by that kind of game, like the edge game, right? And that is a lot of that is movement-based defense, right? So when you're about to fall off the edge, you are trying to stop your opponent from like spiking you off, right? And if somebody's really good at guarding the edge, then you have to be able to kind of recover, and that's where a lot of the movement is important of your positioning, and of course that all relates to timing and everything as well. So I think I think some people think that like because Smash doesn't have these things like high-low mix-ups and left-right mix-ups that that is not. That kind of sophistication is not made up elsewhere, but I think it is. It's just moved into different places, and so there is something that I agree with very strongly with Leffen when he said that. Yeah, there's a lot of similarities that they're just manifest in different forms, and I think actually I cut a lot of some of that out, the nuance in that, but maybe we'll release it on the Patreon. But he mentions that
the full interview. Yeah,
the full interview with Leffen. He says that it's all there. It's just in different forms. It's all kind of shifted around.
It makes sense.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the best way of putting it when comparing those games. And of course, speaking of Leffen, I guess that's an interesting topic, right?
Yeah.
Leffen is the reason I wanted to interview Leffen was because I needed somebody who understood like the archetypal games to a high level
Yeah.
and understood Smash to a high level.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think there are many other people that you could have interviewed
Right.
in that
I'm sure there are many
case.
others understanding both concepts very well. But I guess Leffen is more of the one who kind
Evo
of proved
champion,
it, right?
Evo champion in Guilty Gear Strive, but he was also placing really high.
Yeah.
He got like third place at Evo.
Evo champion
Also,
in Smash also.
yeah,
So
yeah, Evo champion in Melee. And he, like if you look at Strive, he wasn't just playing Happy Chaos either. He was playing like he's played Zato
Yeah.
in and he got like third with Zato in at I forget which Evo, but it's like 2022, 3, something like that.
Mm-mm.
But he's played like Street Fighter 4 back in the. He was a young player. I don't know if you know about that.
I don't know if Leffen remembers, right? We did invite Leffen to one of our Australian tournaments as well.
Really?
It was a Shadowloo Showdown.
Okay.
I beat him in Marvel.
Really?
Yeah. He
So
also
he-
played Marvel.
So he was playing Marvel.
Yeah.
MVC3.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
we played on stage.
Okay.
Yeah.
That
I don't know if the archive is still there. I'll try to find it. I beat
Okay.
him in Marvel. It's not something that I'm like, yeah, I beat Leffen in Marvel. Sadly, I don't know how serious Leffen takes Marvel at the time.
yeah.
But if you were to like name the multi-talented, multi-game talented fighting game player, Leffen's definitely the one of
Yeah.
them.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, maybe he wasn't like at that level in Marvel.
Mm-mm-mm.
But if you look at
But he
those
was
Marvel type games, he's been doing well in Dragon Ball Fighters.
Yeah.
I think he's a favorite to do well in 2X KO, in my opinion. I think he could do
I believe so.
very well,
Yeah.
and of course in anime, so which is Guilty Gear.
He's delved in most games, and he has what it takes to be high level in those games. So
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I loved just talking with him about these games, and he's super he's super interested in the mechanics,
Yeah.
and and he's tried a bunch of stuff. He even tried Tekken, and it's like that's like very far removed from what he usually plays. So being a multi-fighting game specialist, I mean, you are a multi-fighting game specialist as well.
I'm a failed candidate though.
Well, I mean, you're more, I guess, but you're more multi in like the 2D space, and
Somewhat,
and you
yes.
kind of dabble in 3D, right? So
Yeah.
it's kind of, but having this kind of wider perspective is, I think, very important for making videos like this. So, and I also like, I'm a fan of Leffen's play. He's like, I don't know, like I always saw him as like the Tokido of Smash, in a way.
I would agree.
And just somebody.
Tokido also very talented in multiple games.
Yeah,
Same
Tokido as well.
principle.
Yeah, but just a very smart player who understands the, like what you need to do in the game, how to like break the game, right? I like players who can have that. There's a lot of players who just like really like just good by their natural like reactions and
just talent,
instincts, and like, but like, I mean, as much as like Tokido and Leffen have that, I think what stands out with those players is how smart they are when they play. Like we were talking about Shen the other day.
Shen's one of them too. Yes.
One of the just players who's just like, oh, that was so smart. You just outsmarted that other player so hard right now.
That's
right?
how they have clutch abilities too.
Yeah.
In many games. Tokido, like if I were to share a story about Tokido and his multi-game adventures, Tokido was a staple guest that we'd always invite during the Shadowloo Showdown days. He entered like every game, literally every game. Tekken, all the Street Fighters, Marvel, Soul Calibur, except Smash. I guess that's one game that he doesn't really have time to practice for.
Yeah, he's an archetypal homie all the way.
Yeah,
right?
and this was, I think, the year Cross Tekken released as well. So he obviously played that too, without a doubt. Tokido went to grand finals in Soul Calibur against M. Lizard. M. Lizard was also there. We invited him.
Yeah.
M. Lizard also really known for his Lizard Man play in Soul Calibur.
Sure. Yeah.
And Tokido won that.
Yeah.
He went to grand finals of KOF 13 the same year against Xiaohai.
Oh, that's right.
Against Xiaohai, and he lost, sadly.
Yeah.
And then a year later, Tokido beat Xiaohai.
Wow.
And then he did continue to play KOF after beating Xiaohai.
Yeah.
But I think it was like where I don't know if I could confirm it from him, but I think he felt like he achieved the goal.
Yeah, that's
and
like
he slowly just drifted out to back to Street Fighter.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like you can say that that's not his main game,
Mm.
right? I know like a lot of people played that played Street Fighter played KO13
Yeah.
as well during those days. Even Shen, a player that we mentioned before as being one of the smartest players,
Mhm.
he was godlike in King of Fighters as
Oh,
well.
yeah.
Yeah, so I mean there's definitely that was kind of I guess that's the Street Fighter 4 era. If you're looking from a Street Fighter centric lens,
That's right.
which is I guess we were both Street Fighter centric people right now
Yeah.
because we're playing Street Fighter 6. But yeah, I guess yeah maybe that was kind of a tangent. But yeah, back to
about
Leffen.
it's about the story of talented players.
Multi talented multi fighting game specialist players like Leffen. And so yeah, I was really happy to get an interview with him in Sweden actually. So it was yeah, I was in London for the Red Bull event that they had, Golden Letters for Tekken, and I was there to do commentary. And
it's close by, right? Technically.
Yeah, and Josh was like, "Hey, you're gonna be really close. Why don't you just make a trip to Sweden and see if you can interview Leffen? I know how much you wanted that interview for your video." And I was like, "Oh no, that would be amazing." I just emailed him, and yeah, he responded. He was like down for it, and is crazy. Yeah, I went.
So it was actually like it was in the winter time, right?
Yeah, it was snowing. It was like
it made I think it made the atmosphere really cool. Like it wasn't something that like you got a studio to do these shots, but it was just naturally snowing there.
Yeah, it was real snow, and it was really what you would expect Sweden would look like in the winter. So
definitely,
yeah, I was really happy with the way the shots came out, and
snow shots are really nice in my personal opinion. Like all the weathers, I love snow.
The music
shots.
that I used is also there's a track that's available on Creative Commons. I forget the artist, but it's like one of those in those smash and chill.
Okay.
Playlists.
But it would be one of those popular license-free music that a lot of other YouTube channels
Well,
use.
it's a remix of an Earthbound song, which is a Nintendo song.
Right.
Yeah, and it's like I think the song's called like Snowman or something, and it's kind of supposed to have that winter vibe. So that's the one song that I used that wasn't from a game, and it was remixed by an artist. And
from Mother 3.
And when I saw the track was available for use as long as you credit the artist, I was like, oh, this is awesome. And of course, I credited the artist just on the description.
Fitting for a Smash player, yeah.
Yeah, no, I was really happy with the way that part came out overall. So it's kind of scary too, because like you have all these interviews and you're working on the video for years, and you're just like, is this like gonna like people are waiting for the video to come out, and then like I remember Super Akuma was like, oh, like I was wondering when this would come out, and I think he liked the video and everything, so I'm glad. But I hope that people can feel that it was worth doing the interview.
Also was contacted. Did you know if he saw our video eventually?
Not yet. I mean, he might have,
give him a nudge or something.
But yeah, I mean, it's an hour-long video. I know people like my videos are. People wait. To see them sometimes. They're just like, oh, well, I don't have to watch it now.
I mean, it's highly likely that someone within the community must have saw it and told them anyway, and I think that's usually the case, I guess.
Or I could just message him. Yeah, I could just ask him. I don't know. I'm fine. Those people can usually like I leave people alone. I
just hope they like it. That's what I'm
I mean I hope people like the video in general. So yeah, I mean this whole Smash section, of course, ends off with the idea of the platform game being its own subgenre of the hybrid category, right? So platform fighting games is of course the flagship is Smash, but there are now so many different platform fighting games out there, and they use very, very similar mechanics, but they have a different take on them. They might add a mechanic here, take away a mechanic, but they all have different flavors. But the core is that Smash kind of gameplay. And if you look at like Rivals of Aether, that game is like it's like Smash in a lot of ways, but it has a parry mechanic, right?
Right.
And it doesn't have ledge grabbing, right? So that automatically changes the game a lot, but then it's very much a platform fighter in the way that you knock people off the edge as your goal. And I
think Rivals is more close to Smash than Smash being close to Outfoxes as well. So that's
for
another
sure.
point where I'm trying to make, where Outfoxes definitely requires the honorable mention, but the gap has been way too long. And one thing I am kind of jealous about what Smash is and what Smash has become is Smash is already a crossover game from
Yeah.
various Nintendo titles, right?
Yes.
Street Fighter and other fighting games have to pray for a crossover event to happen with the, and it's something that's not guaranteed. But Smash and the Nintendo fans kind of got that to begin with, so that's what I'm jealous about.
Yeah, I could. That's a very interesting point you make because I think one of the things about like Terry Bogard or Chun-Li or Spinal in Killer Instinct or any of those games, they originate from a fighting game.
Sure.
They started in fighting games,
That's
right?
right.
So if you look at something like Smash, another thing that makes Smash different from all the other archetypal games, or a lot of the archetypal games, I should say, is that none of the characters there originated in fighting games of the original cast. They all come from something else,
platform
some kind of
games and adventure games,
RPGs. Like they come from, so that roster is not really like a fighting game roster. Of course, they have guest characters like people like Kazuya coming into the game now, but yeah, in terms
this
of like
is our genre now.
yeah. I mean, this is how you start wars, right? This is but there's if you look at X-Men versus Street Fighter, like it's like sorry, but X-Men are not fighting
games to
like,
begin with.
Originated, they're not characters that originated from fighting games. Like, sorry,
they know how to fight,
yeah,
but not really in a fighting game.
Yeah,
historically,
yeah, they're not, but they're very famous. They're more famous than the Street Fighter cast.
Yeah,
right. So this is what is also kind of interesting about Smash. And 2XKO is one of those games where the IP is from a completely different game, and this is kind of interesting
it's
because
a similar concept then.
It is, but I guess all the characters are coming from the League of Legends universe,
which is a PvP environment in a way.
Yeah, so it's. I don't think this is very common. I think this might be the only time it's ever been done like this, where you take a game from like a completely different genre,
right,
and then you make all of them into a fighting game. I know like Smash kind of did that with platformers, but then there's like RPG characters, like there's like Link and there's Ness from Earthbound.
Yeah.
And so that you have like this kind of like mixing of characters. And then there's tons of fighting games where you just take IP from something even non-gaming related,
Super
right?
Mario had RPG. Super Mario RPG was a thing. So like hopping through genres was definitely a thing. But I guess coming from something to fighting games is not as common in compared to coming from something to like an FPS or a platformer or a puzzle or an RPG. They are more, I guess, not as niche.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So this has been kind of an interesting topic. Once again, like Smash is kind of something that we've been close to, and we've run into a lot of Smash people, a lot of Smash players. I've played in Smash tournaments, didn't do too well, but we all kind of have been around Smash. They're kind of like cousins in a way, right? It's
still in the family.
Yeah, they're in the family for sure, and but there's definitely like it's like a different. There are the differences, and we're talking about the idea of shibboleths, right?
Yes.
So if you look at like the way Smash players describe things and the way archetypal fighting game players describe things is very different, and because it has different histories, and you can tell what community you're originally from by what you think of first when you hear something, right? So I guess a couple examples like I used in the community videos, the idea of a Ken combo. If you're a FGC background, Ken combo might be probably going to be like Ken Masters doing a combo, whereas it's in Smash, it's actually a player named Ken, Liquid Ken, doing a special combo, right? So there's that. Friendlies and casuals, they're the same thing.
Shout outs to Mike Ross.
Shout outs to Mike Ross. Yeah, Mike Ross was when he heard the term friendlies, he was just like so shocked.
There's nothing friendly about this.
There's nothing friendly. But there's also was it a mirror match?
They play Ditto.
They play Dittos, right?
Yes.
So this is a thing where this actually has history.
I love that, man.
Yeah, there's a history because the mirror match comes from Mortal Kombat 1, which was the first time of the post Street Fighter 2 fighting games where you could actually choose the same
Same
character.
character.
And in Street Fighter 2, you could not. World
Yeah,
Warrior, you
World
could
Warrior
not.
did not let you.
Yeah,
the cursor will be blocked.
Yeah, the
literally.
cursor's blocked. Yeah,
Yeah.
you cannot go to the other person. It's like, all right, well, I guess you're playing Guile, and I can never beat you now because Guile
I
is
guess
top
if
tier.
you wanted to play Ken, you can still play Ryu. They're the
Yeah,
same.
yeah.
That's the only way out.
Yeah. But I mean, maybe that's why they have Ryu and Ken,
Yeah, I
right?
guess. Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of similar same concepts that they have different terms for, but the fact that they have those different terms, or that they have those same concepts, albeit even if they're different terms, mean that there are a lot of similarities there. And so it's kind of interesting. I think there was the biggest one was some troll just went in and like said that mix-ups in Smash was called guessies. You remember that?
Oh, guessies.
Yeah, guessies.
I remember
Yeah,
this. I remember the clip someone actually put it on social media about this. This was
Oh yeah, no, people were that was
fun
the
discovery.
ultimate that was the ultimate troll, and I think a lot of people were upset and I was like, that's not true. You don't say that. It's like
guessies.
and the thing is like I knew that was a made up thing.
Yeah, I could tell like immediately. But
But the thing is like there are people who might not know that that's like, there are people that might be like, oh, that's what they call it, guessies, and it's like
people can definitely think certain things are real.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, so it's kind of, I don't know. That was one of the big, I don't know, blow ups or memes, I guess, from that time. That was a long time ago. But I think the FGC and Smash people are a lot better these days around each other. They're way more comfortable. Like, because back in the day, it was pretty rough. There are people who were like had very, very strong feelings about like a Smash fighting game.
I would say
of the FGC.
that's out of passion too, right? But just delivered in a different way.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a strong level of identity in that because, like you said, I think you made the example of like is a tomato or fruit or a vegetable.
It's a ongoing debate. It was an ongoing debate, but it was an ongoing debate only for those who didn't really want to delve into the educational sense. They just wanted to go by their experiences rather than the scientific.
Yeah, well, like you said, if you like tomatoes, you really don't care that much, right? If you just like to eat tomatoes,
that's the thing.
Yeah, if you just like playing Street Fighter or Smash or whatever, it's like, and you will care on some level in terms of the way that it affects your identity. I guess that's the thing where it can get kind of charged and heated. But ultimately, like when you're playing the game that you like and you're like enjoying it a lot, you're not really thinking about that kind of stuff. So this is a thing, like when you're looking on your phone and you're on Twitter or whatever, that's when you're not playing the game. And now you're seeing kind of the more identity aspects of being part of these subcultures. Whereas if you're in a local and you're playing, you're either in a place where you're that has like-minded people who want to play those games. You're in those situations, they're not going to really care about that. What people will care about is like learning tech from each other and having good games. And ultimately, like this is the thing with what we're doing with Core Gaming. I don't ever want it to devolve into this thing where we just talk only about the games and just only talk about these things and write about these things, and we got to play these things too. And so I think the stream is really important for that, to get us, because like I had the biggest like hiatus from fighting games that I've had since like 2012 or something like that, or 2011. It was I just I played Street Fighter 6 to a certain level, went to Evo 2023, and then from then it was like a year I just didn't play. And what I started noticing was you start caring about like, what are these companies doing? What are their DLC practices? What is this? You start like thinking about that stuff more when you're not actually playing the games. And I mean, that stuff, it's not that it's not important, but it becomes the most important thing to you, because now you're not worried about like, now you're not thinking about like, oh, how am I gonna get my run back on this person, or those are the things that like I think make these games the most exciting. So that's kind of the shared reality, I think, whether you say think Smash is a fighting game or not, or if you think it's not a fighting game, that kind of stuff matters only so much until you're just playing the
Yeah,
games
just
and
come
you're
and
enjoying
play.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's
I'm not gonna be irresponsible and say who cares. I'm sure there are people that care enough. That's why these discussions happen, which I really respect. But I suppose, like, yeah, where do you draw? I mean, where do you focus on in where you are truly supporting the game that you love, right?
yeah,
So
and this is a thing too. Like when I've talked to Smash players about this, they understand that there's this thing about like Smash not kind of fitting into the mold of the community that grew up on
mm,
the archetypal games, right? It's acknowledged,
yeah,
even during the interview I had with Leffen, and I kept that in there. He basically says like, I'm a fighting game player and a Smash player. If you think those are two are
different.
different, yeah.
Yeah,
So even like as a Smash player, you understand that there's kind of a difference there. I think it's important to understand
mm,
that exists, but not make a huge fuss out of it,
sure.
right?
Yeah,
I think that's the kind of the best way of looking at it. Then you can still kind of like analyze and look at what these games are, how they're different. But then you can also not make it devolve into this kind of almost like a political
yeah.
debate or something. It's
Because
like
I mean,
what we're pressing buttons here. It's like,
yeah,
come
and
on.
I don't want to sound too sentimental, but then there's always this, um, whenever someone asks a generic question about, oh, why do you like this game or why do you play this game in a like a tournament? Usually these interviews happen from like general like YouTubers or some journalists who visit like offline events for the first time, and a lot of them do just say, "I love the game," and you can also kind of discover large proportion of those people also say, I come to events because of the people, right?
Yeah.
That's one of those answers that you would frequently hear. But it's not to say that they are splitting the two, right? Definitely you love the game to begin with, as well as the people you meet is also great. I just don't want them to be segregated. I want to be like, I want to believe that they are actually saying, I love the game as much as the people, or vice versa, right?
Yeah.
Not to have them too confused and go one direction too much, right?
Yeah.
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 Um. Yeah, and then I guess we've been talking for a while. We can cap it off with
Oh yeah. So did we? We didn't really talk. There's one thing where a lot of people mentioned about Sakurai not having actually been inspired by the moment where he bodied that couple
the
in
poor couple.
KOF. Yeah, that poor couple.
Yes.
Uh, so what I'm seeing is that Sakurai has said that did not influence
The
him
creation of
in the creation of Super Smash Brothers.
hmm,
And so, I
which, by the way, was in the video description of that video.
yeah, so the source I got was a translated Famitsu article, which is I
That's
don't
the
know how
original interview,
that's the
right?
original interview. It was like in 2004. It was a long time ago,
Mhm.
and I guess this has been kind of following him around a lot. And I don't know. I mean, just from the source, if Famitsu is to be a
Yeah,
trusted
I wouldn't
source.
say Famitsu made stuff up.
Yeah, Famitsu is a pretty reputable source, but I don't know. Maybe I don't know if the translation went
Right.
through something. But there was yeah, he did mention the story, and I think the story is not the controversial thing. I think that people know that. I think Sakurai acknowledges that happened. That he beat a
Yeah.
couple in
It
a.
actually was a canon event.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
a canon event. But the dispute is if that event is what sparked
Smash Bros or not.
yeah, Smash Bros. I guess I guess the thing is, I mean, I guess it probably wasn't like he just beat somebody in KOF and was like, oh man, I'm gonna make Smash now. It probably wasn't like that, right?
It's not gonna be the math equation of this equals Smash, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but how much of those experiences that he had that made him inspired to make a fighting game more accessible? I guess that's more of the question. And I guess this is just kind of there's a quote in here. This is why, like, in a lot of my videos, like, there's like a quote or like a source. I'll usually have a shot of that
Yep.
going to the website and going to the text and then highlighting the text. And I didn't do it with this one. I was going to, but I guess yeah, I can talk about it here. So there's a part where it says, and it was bolded. So I'll just read the full
Yeah,
paragraph
just
to put it in context. I like fighting games even today. This is after he explained the whole thing about beating the couple in
sure.
King of Fighters. I like fighting games even today, and playing them with my circle of friends is still fun. Thinking as a consumer, knowing that there's a foundation of fun in fighting games has already been laid down. I do wish a fighting game would come along that solves the problems that newer introductory players face.
Hmm.
Thinking as a developer, Smash Brothers is the only answer I can offer. Please make do with that. And I did make do with that.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I, you
Yeah.
know,
So we're going
that,
by what he said via the Famitsu platform.
yeah,
So even if Sakurai or his managers were to say that that wasn't the case in that video that he made on YouTube, um, Smash exists and
yeah.
his interview exists. Therefore, we can link the dots.
Yeah, but I guess maybe the leap that that people are uncomfortable with is the idea that that was the moment he was like, I'm going to make Smash or
Right,
whatever.
right.
I imagine it was more, he had many moments like this.
Yeah, sure. It would be just a percentage of his whole experiences.
Yeah, it's just a small percentage of his experiences, but maybe that's something that he particularly remembered. But when developing Smash, I mean, if the idea of accessibility in fighting games was not even mentioned during the development of the game, then I
Yeah.
don't know. I can't live. I don't
What
understand
other
anything.
games that he
You know,
made that is close to
Like
what he described?
it's like if you look at Sakurai also and his game design philosophy. I mean, he made Kirby,
Yep.
right? I mean, think about what Kirby is as like a platformer game and the contributions it made to the platform. I mean, there's a lot of new elements like flying and eating monsters
Yeah.
and stuff, but in terms of like Kirby's not the game like that inspires like those Cat Mario and those trolling platformer games, and even something like Mario Lost Levels. You know
Sure.
how Super Mario Brothers the Japanese
Yeah.
sequel that didn't make it to the US or whatever. Like it's like that's I just remember that game had really hard jumps and leaps and
Oh,
stuff.
okay.
Yeah. But like if you think
It
about
had
like
a skill difficulty,
well,
skill gap.
oh
kinda?
yeah, it was a very hard. Like I heard rumors. I don't know if this is true, but I heard rumors that like it wasn't released in the U.S. because the Americans aren't as good at games as the Japanese were.
Damn, is that why they made modern mode in Street
No,
Fighter
so
6?
see,
Oh
so
my
okay, all
God.
right. So
We're delving
now,
into that
now we're in
territory?
dangerous. We're at the end of this podcast. We made it so far, and now we're
Damn.
getting in some deep trouble here. So, anyway, so like the idea of Kirby, if you think about it, what does Kirby do? Kirby flies.
Mm-hmm. Floats and flies and
Yeah, Kirby can float and fly, right? So think about that from a platforming perspective. That's very accessible to fly to your platform rather than to jump over a pit where like you have to be pixel perfect and a running start to make it to the very edge of the next platform. It's a very different design philosophy. So maybe in that sense, he just that's been his philosophy from the start in terms of game design. Yeah, I don't know, but yeah, I guess I don't want there to be any confusion as to that part of the video, but whether that story is completely had zero influence. I don't know. Maybe that's the case,
it
but
would have
it's just
some influence regardless.
I just imagine that it would have, and according to the article, it seemed like it had a profound influence. But all right, well, that wraps up the Smash portion of this multi-series or multi-part series. And I think the next one will be the last one that we do
we can cover stuff like arenas and all the other category stuff.
Yeah, the other categories. We'll talk a little bit about 2XKO, and I think I'm just overall going to talk about the experience of the video's release and all the things that came with it. And I'll just
it's a legacy, pretty much.
Yeah, it's a big video, and there's a lot to talk about outside of just the games themselves. So
yeah, awesome.